On March 23, 2015, the quiet of a Vallejo, California neighborhood was broken at 3:12 in the morning. Two men entered the home of Denise Huskins and her boyfriend Aaron Quinn, but this wasn't a frantic, chaotic home invasion. The intruders were calm, almost unnervingly so. They moved with precision, as if they had rehearsed their every step. They didn't shout, they didn't rush, they spoke in measured tones, knowing exactly where to stand to maintain control. They placed blackout goggles over Denise's eyes, blinding her to her. They restrained her, and then led the 29-year-old physical therapist out of her home and into the darkness. Her boyfriend, Aaron, was left behind, drugged and tied up. Before they vanished with Denise, the kidnappers left him with a chilling warning: if you call the police, she will die. Aaron was left in an impossible situation. The threat was explicit. For hours, he waited, torn between the kidnappers' command and the desperate need for help. Finally, he made the call he was warned against. He called 911. But when the Vallejo police arrived, their response was not what he expected. Instead of treating the house as a crime scene, they seemed to treat it as a problem. They saw no broken windows, no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. To them, the scene didn't add up. Aaron recounted the night's events in painstaking detail. He described the calm intruders, the pre-recorded messages they played, the strange, almost surgical nature of the abduction. But the police found his account too detailed, too specific. They thought it sounded rehearsed, and within hours, the entire focus of the investigation shifted. The police began to write their own story, one where the kidnapping was a hoax, the victim was a liar, and Aaron was the prime suspect. By the end of that first day, the search for Denise Huskins had effectively stopped. Instead, investigators turned their full attention to Aaron Quinn. They questioned him relentlessly. For over 18 hours, they administered a lie detector test, which he passed, but they told him he failed. They scrutinized his tone of voice, his body language, his timeline of events. They told him his story didn't make sense, that it was impossible. No statewide alert was issued for Denise. In the minds of the investigators, there was no active abduction to solve. The case was closed before it had even truly begun. They told Aaron to get a lawyer and to tell them where Denise was. Then, 48 hours after she was taken, something incredible happened. Denise Huskins reappeared. She was dropped off near her parents' home in Huntington Beach, more than 400 miles away from where she was abducted. She was alive, but she was not okay. She had been held captive for 2 days, drugged, repeatedly assaulted, and threatened. She had endured an unimaginable trauma. She expected to find safety, protection, and help. Instead, she was met with the same wall of disbelief that Aaron had faced. She was taken into custody and interrogated for hours. Instead of treating her as a victim, the police treated her as a suspect in her own kidnapping. They told her flat out that they didn't believe her. They claimed the evidence didn't support her story. They accused her of lying, of staging the entire thing. The nightmare she had just escaped was now continuing under the fluorescent lights of an interrogation room. And then, they went public. The Vallejo Police Department held a press conference. Standing before a room full of reporters, they didn't announce a breakthrough in a kidnapping case. Instead, they publicly condemned the victims. They announced that the abduction of Denise Huskins was an orchestrated event and not a random act of violence. They implied that the couple had wasted valuable resources and owed the community an apology. The media ran with the story. News outlets across the country picked it up, and the narrative was set. Denise and Aaron were liars who had staged a bizarre kidnapping for attention or money. The case was compared to the plot of the popular movie Gone Girl, which had been released just months earlier. Denise was labeled the real-life Gone Girl, a manipulative woman who faked her own abduction. Her trauma was no longer private. It was a public spectacle, a piece of entertainment. Her credibility, her reputation, and her sense of safety were destroyed in real time, broadcast for the entire world to see. She was tried and convicted in the court of public opinion, based on a false narrative created and promoted by the very people who were supposed to protect her. But there were details Denise had provided from the very beginning that the police had dismissed as fantasy. She described the kidnappers' strange methods, the blackout goggles they forced her to wear, the pre-recorded voice commands they used to disorient her, the almost ritualistic routine of the entire ordeal. Police dismissed these as elaborate lies, elements of a story she'd made up. Months went by. Then, in an entirely separate case, a detective in a nearby city named Misty Karayusu was investigating a series of home invasions. She arrested a suspect, a man named Matthew Muller, a former Marine and Harvard-educated lawyer. During a search of Muller's property, Detective Karayusu found something that stopped her cold. She found a pair of blackout goggles, just like the ones Denise had described. She found audio recordings with voice commands used during kidnappings, and she found handwritten notes, a sort of manifesto, that described the abduction of Denise Huskins in chilling detail. Every single fact, every strange and seemingly unbelievable element of Denise's story matched the evidence found in Muller's possession. Exactly. Faced with this undeniable evidence, Matthew Muller confessed. He admitted to kidnapping Denise Huskins. He explained his methods, how he used a sophisticated lock-picking kit to enter the house without leaving a trace, which is why there was no forced entry. He explained that he was part of a small, clandestine group that saw themselves as a sort of Ocean's 11 of criminals, targeting people for what they believed were justified reasons. He revealed that he had released Denise because the media attention had become too intense, drawing a spotlight he and his group wanted to avoid. The case the police had insisted never happened, had happened. Every single detail was real. After the truth came out, you might expect a public reckoning, a press conference where the Vallejo Police Department would stand up and apologize, correcting the false narrative they had so aggressively promoted. You might expect them to work just as hard to restore Denise and Erin's reputations as they had to destroy them. But that's not what happened. There was no public apology. There was no press conference to undo the damage. The department quietly acknowledged some mistakes had been made, but there was no grand gesture of accountability. Years later, Denise and Erin reached a financial settlement with the city of Vallejo, but no one in the police department was fired. No one was disciplined. The system that had failed them so profoundly learned nothing, corrected nothing about itself. Independent reviews of the case later confirmed what Denise and Erin had been saying from the very beginning. The evidence to support their story was there all along. It was in Erin's detailed account. It was in the unusual but consistent facts of the crime. It was always there, but it was ignored. It was ignored because a few investigators made a decision on day one that the case was impossible. They decided it was a hoax. And once that decision was made, every piece of evidence, every fact that contradicted their theory, wasn't seen as a clue to be followed. It was seen as a threat to their narrative. The crime that took place on March 23rd was real. The kidnapping was real. The trauma was real. The true failure wasn't just what a criminal did that night. It was what happened next, when the people sworn to pursue the truth decided it was too inconvenient, too strange, too unbelievable to believe. Thank you for watching. If you found this story important, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into cases that deserve to be heard.